What is up, everybody? My name is Stephanie. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through my process of painting a face, and not just any face. We are going to be working on one of the brand new Cities of Sigmar Ogor models, and I thought because his face is a little bit bigger than the average that it would be easier to demonstrate my new and improved face painting process on. So over the last few months, I've changed quite a few things that I do and don't do when it comes to painting faces. And so as we walk through this process and I show you how I paint this face, I'll be talking about things that I used to do that didn't really work, why they didn't work, maybe you're doing those same things, and how I leveled up my face painting skills. So I'm really excited about this. If you can't tell, let's go ahead and get into it. So before we get started, I just wanted to show you really quickly the way that the goopy stuff was set on my handle, and then putting the face on, it looked like a giant dude wearing an orange t-shirt, and I thought that was so funny, and you probably won't be able to unsee that for the rest of the video, so you're welcome. So behold the colors you will need for this tutorial. This is my typical go-to for peach flesh. We've got shadow flesh, dark flesh, burgundy, and then pale yellow added in for highlights. And then we're going to be using black and an off grayish white for the eyes. And you're not supposed to use like pure white because it makes them look a little bit too bright and unnatural. So that's why I'm using that gray. And then that was just Rayclan Flesh Shade. So starting with that first shadow flesh color, all I am doing here is base coating, and I do water it down just a little bit. You want it to flow, but you also want decent coverage. I found that doing one, not thick coat, but one solid coat is better than doing a whole bunch of watery coats just for this initial layer. So yeah, that is all that I am doing. And this is what it looks like after that first step. So we're actually going to be doing eyes first, and that's Abaddon black, doesn't matter what black you use, combined with dark flesh to make a color that is a very dark brown, almost black. And all I am doing is putting this in the entire socket of the eye. And the reason we're doing that is to give some distinction. You don't want to go in with just the pure white for the eyeball. You want to separate the eye out from the rest of the face by adding the shadow around, and it's much easier to place this first and then do the white over than it is to do the white and then try to like basically do teeny tiny eyeliner on it to get that shadow. That's what I used to do, and it was quite silly. So yeah, place the shadow first and then go in and do the eye. Another tip that I have is that using retarder when placing the white for the eye is just ingenious, because this is a teeny tiny brush and white paint dries very quickly, and putting that little bit of retarder in it just makes it apply easier, and it doesn't get chalky, and it just looks better. So yeah, that's my tip for that. All I'm doing here is placing the pupil, and when doing this you want to do up down, kind of like you're making a mark in the center of the eye. I don't actually try to make it a circle, I just do it up and down, and it ends up looking like a circle because the space is so limited. So yeah. And then clean up. So you'll see me here just taking some of that first color for the flesh and cleaning up the area before we add shadows and definition. This is why we did the eyes first, so that you can clean up the areas around it very easily without undoing any work on the flesh. So yeah. So we are taking Rayclan Flesh Shade, but wait we are not using this in the way that we typically would. We are not just going to be slopping this all around. We're going to put this in a very thoughtful and careful way into the deepest parts so that we can start building shadow and definition. So previously what I would do is for peach flesh, I would start from a much darker tone and try to build highlights up, way up. And actually, I found that starting from a mid-tone like shadow flesh and manually placing the shadows gives you more control and makes it a lot easier and a lot less likely to get cakey, because it is a lot easier to place shadows with a wash than it is to start from a deep tone and build up layers and layers and layers. And we're going for high contrast, saturated results here, and I have found I can get the same level of saturation by starting at a mid-tone, manually adding shadows and highlights, than I can with starting from a deep tone and then working my way up, especially on something with a small surface area like a face. Using a wash just saves a lot of heartache and angst. But like I said, I'm not just applying this all over the entire face. I'm keeping it out of the eyes, and I want to preserve that mid-tone. I just want to use this in a layered way into those shadows. So you'll see me just gently placing those here. I'm focusing on cracks, I'm focusing on wrinkles, under eye shadows. I'm bringing definition to where the forehead meets the hairline, all of those areas, into the cheekbones, just anywhere where you need that extra depth. Just go ahead and put it on. Use a tiny brush. Be careful. I actually did 2 or 3 layers of this, letting each one dry before applying the next one. Alright guys, so this is burgundy, and this is one of my favorite colors to use when trying to peachify my little guys. All I did was add some water. You can see the consistency here. It's pretty thick, and I am just reinforcing all of those areas that we just established with the Rakelin Flesh Shade, and I am particularly focusing on the areas around the nose, around the eyes, and up to the ears. And I think it was on a masterclass video from Louise Sugden, if I remember correctly, that talked about how there are more blood vessels in that area, and that's why we blush there. And so I always think about adding more pinkish tones to that area. Sometimes I go way overboard, and I love it. I love all my guys to be little blushing beauties. This color also makes a perfect inside of mouth base coat, so I'm just going to go ahead while I have it on my brush and toss it on in there as well. You want to make sure you get all of the areas inside the mouth, including the teeny tiny little strip of gum above the teeth. So what I do is I just throw it in there, disregarding the teeth for now, knowing that I will return to them and pick them out with a tooth colored paint later. So yeah, I am taking my pale yellow, my Artist Opus, and I am just mixing a little bit of that pale yellow into the flesh color, and now we're going to begin highlighting. So any areas that catch the light are going to be getting more attention. So we're talking about tip of the nose, the top of the brow, cheekbones, all of those areas that are higher up than the rest are going to get a layer here. And then after this, we're going to add a little bit more pale yellow into that mix and do a more focused layer with less surface area. So he was looking good at this point, but wasn't quite blushy enough, I felt like. So I am just taking burgundy again, watering it down quite a bit. There is barely any pigment here, and we're just gonna be placing this on his cheeks. And again, this is personal preference, but look how beautiful this is, you guys. He looks great. It just adds something. It just adds something, you know? I can't explain it, but yeah, I love the effect that this has. All right, our giant orange t-shirt man is in need of a little stubble, and so all I do to get this effect is add the tiniest bit of black into the regular mid-tone, skin tone, whatever you used. If you're following this, then that would be shadow flesh, and just by adding a tiny little bit of black, watering it down quite a bit, we're going to deposit this in the areas that you want where his facial hair would perhaps be growing. I really like the effect that this gives, and you can make it as intense or as subtle as you want. This is what it looks like after one coat. I think I let this dry and then did a couple, and then this is where I left it. So yeah, we're gonna move on. That was brown sand, and it's a really great tooth color for someone who maybe wouldn't have the best dental hygiene. So I am just base coating that, and then all I do is add a lighter color to it for a little bit of highlight. If you need some definition, you can also throw a wash like Rayclin Flesh Shade into the mouth, and I found that using one that's like flesh colored works and looks a lot more natural than using Nuln Oil in there. But yeah, I am just going to be doing a quick little piece on the hair. It's not really the focus of the video, but I have found that by base coating the hair in a dark color and then manually placing the highlights with a huge gap, like high contrast, you can see the paint I'm using here is practically white. Place those highlights first in a concentrated way and then make a glaze of whatever midtone you want and apply them over. It will make it look high contrast but really smooth, and it's a really easy way to get a nice blend over a small surface area like a strand of hair. So that is my little tip on hair. We are coming up on the end now, and I think he's looking really good. Um, Total cutie, and I was so excited, you guys, so excited to attach his head to his body because it's so incredibly satisfying. So I'm just gonna let this finish, and then I'm gonna show you what he looks like when he's all done. Last thing, tip for hair, take Nuln Oil, and after everything is highlighted and everything, put just a little bit of Nuln Oil into the cracks. Don't put it all over everything. You don't want to dampen the work you just did on the highlights, but if you just drag it through the underside and any deep like parts in the hair, it will up your contrast and just make it look that much better. So that is all I'm doing here. So here is his body, you guys. I worked so hard on this. I worked on this model for like 2 weeks secretly. And there's this other guy on top. I absolutely love this model. It's probably my favorite one from Cities of Sigmar right now. He's so freaking cool. If you're interested in the non-metallic metal, like all the steel you see on his shoulders and his weapon and everything, I do have a video about that coming out on Patreon in 3 days. It'll be up November 1st. Here are some more pictures. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. See you next time.